You're listening to Mondays Unfiltered, the podcast for anyone who's accepted that work is inevitably work. We're your hosts, Heather and Kristin. We break down burnout, baffling policies, and corporate chaos with dry humor and real solutions. Grab your coffee and whatever optimism survived the weekend, Mondays have begun. A little about us. Chris spent decades helping executives shape brands and craft messages that inspire, and I built systems that actually made those visions work behind the scenes and kept people from falling apart in the process. Thanks for joining us today. Happy day
Happy
after
month.
tax. Oh
Oh,
no, Monday after tax. Tax was last
oh.
Wednesday.
Well, my accountant, I had not heard from them. And mind you, I get my stuff in as soon as possible. And didn't hear. I used them out last year. They're in Colorado. I was like, what's going on? Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm not going to get to them.
What?
Yes.
They didn't even warn you that they were behind? You just happened
No.
to be like, hello.
No. And so I was like, okay, are you going to pay a fee, a late
Yeah.
fee? Or, like I've never been late.
Yeah.
I've never. Anyway, so yeah, that's my tax thing. Anyway, so let's talk about today because I'm all fired up, Heather.
Yeah.
Okay, because today's subject came across my feed this morning, and it just so happened that two people that I talked to, one I coach, were telling me horror stories about their big corporate companies talking about having more layoffs.
Ugh.
It was over the weekend, and the other person was very upset because they had just hired somebody on their team a month and a half previously.
Yeah.
So, today's quote, and I know you're going to be able to guess it, is good luck with your layoffs. All right. I hope your firings go really well. You know that one.
I love Peter. He's the best.
So that's what we're going to talk about today because the thing I got across the TikTok after two very conscientious people that I had conversations with at the end of last week were both wrapped around the axle about stuff that they had to tell their teams. Um, I come across something in my feed from Business Insider about, according to this article, career transition firm, and I can't remember the name of the firm that they quoted, but I'll put the link to the article in the description. Over 92,000 jobs lost since 2023 were given the reason as AI was replacing those jobs.
Well,
The truth is much more sinister. Those jobs are actually being rehired as contractors. And so another study
are they
in
rehiring the same employees or
some
just random?
in some cases. And if you remember, we had a conversation, I can't remember which episode it was, but it was one of the recent ones. And I said Google was quietly hiring back
Yeah.
people. So this one was lovely. This one said 55% of HR managers polled in this study said they plan to hire contractors because contractors don't cost the money, the company money and benefits, 401k, etc. So that's kind of stinky.
Kind of.
Um, it's very stinky. And now, mind you, back in the early 2000s, the tech boom, blah, blah, the digital boom, the dot-com boom, or whatever the heck it was, I was part of that. I was at AOL for 8 years. We would have layoffs once or twice a year. And sometimes, if you had another job lined up, you wanted to be the one to raise your hand
Mm-hmm.
and say, lay me off, because you got to, in some
Yeah.
cases, they got like a year-long vacation,
Yeah.
paid
And so
vacation.
I've talked to a few people recently that are like, I'm just biding my time and there's going to be a day that I'll get laid off. And honestly, maybe that's fine. And that's unfortunate, but depending on how far you are in your career, someone I talked to said, I'm anticipating at some point I will be, but they were like, what do I've worked here for 20 years. I don't know how to interview. I don't even know where to start. And then you're encountering ageism perhaps. And you know, that's why I do what I do. I like to coach people on that and how to think differently, but if it's happening to that many people, it's hard to reach everybody.
Well, not only that, but then you're flooding the job market
Mhm.
with people that are doing the same jobs.
True.
And now the one thing I found with working with for yourself is there are certain perks, like you can write off the
Yeah.
cost of your home office. You can save more for more of a percentage for retirement before taxes
Mhm.
as an independent contractor. So there are certain things, and if you kind of set your hourly rate up correctly and you've been, I think we've talked about this before, and I think the same is true as if you're a contractor or you're want to go back into the workforce, is you should always be networking,
Yeah.
always be learning and that kind of thing. So there are some benefits to it. I firmly believe the pendulum will swing.
Yeah.
It will always swing back. And just because I'm Pollyanna
Well, and I
and
feel like, see, my parents told me this my whole life growing up. They framed it around fashion about how it'll always come back around. Like I
like
remember
the bell
my mom,
bottoms.
yeah, my mom would be like, whatever I was around, we wore that in the 50s or whatever.
Yeah,
So, it'll come back around. The history repeats itself. The universe is cyclical. So I do believe that you will see things that will be adjusted for change and development and growth and forward thinking, and then they're going to go, let's go back to how it used to be. It was more effective, or let's try to make it more simple for process improvement or whatever. But and then you'll go back and you'll start. There was a post recently I saw that was like, what would be great if each house had a phone in the house that just stayed in the house and everyone could use it
where'd you see
rather than
that?
a cell phone. They were talking about putting a wall phone back.
I think the communication companies would love that because it's so much harder to track, like identity, because that used to be a big way that I worked for identity, a customer identity company. So
Well, and speaking of identity,
I can get all
and
nerdy about that.
but like so many people identify with their work rather than who they are as a person. They get too tied up in what they do as who they are, and then you get upset when you get laid off. And it's a personal thing. It feels like you're being attacked, like you're being discarded, unwanted, but it's not typically about you. It's about the
It
task.
isn't.
It's about the line item. It's about the profits at the end of the year. It's not about you.
Well, they look at org charts is what they
Yeah.
do. I was a essentially chief of staff for the big organization at AOL, and had to kind of help navigate from an operational perspective through some of those layoffs. And it is, I mean, it's true. They will take the opportunity if they have some underperforming people
Yeah.
of laying them off
Rightly
versus
so.
having to go through a hiring process. But in both cases where I've been talking, like there was three big tech companies that have lots of contacts at still. And so, they're getting ready for them. And what the cause of the layoff is, and we'll get back to the whole identity thing in a second. I think that's important to talk about. Is, they're trying to lighten their load before the earnings report comes out.
Yeah. Yep. That's
So
what I was talking about, line items. It's about a dollar amount. It's not about
it's
you
it's
typically.
not about you. And so they might hire you back, but
Yeah.
um,
But do you want to go back then?
do you want to go back? Well, I
Mm,
mean, I guess if you need a job
yeah.
and you need an income, and there's
Yeah.
there's
So
limited
many
out
people
there.
I've talked to, and even I was listening to something yesterday, it's like an average of a 6 month um transition period of layoff to rehire in somewhere else or the same company is
Well,
you're
that's if
looking
you're
at
not in,
about 6 months.
if you're not a director or a VP, depending on where it is, because it takes longer to do that.
Oh, for sure.
Um, yeah, so that it was that. And, so years ago when I was I worked with so many different little analytic companies, SaaS companies. There was a guy, and this was when DEI was coming up, right? Like
Mhm.
DEI's suffered a lot in the past couple of years.
Yeah.
Um, he had a whole way to measure brands based on how healthy the company was. And what he means by healthy
I
is
was just
he
going to
wasn't
ask.
talking about bottom line, just bottom line. He was talking about the healthiness of the employees, the
The
culture,
culture? Yeah.
all of that. Yeah. So there it was a really interesting, and I think he's still around. And I think that's valid.
Hmm.
Because again, we've talked about this before, and I will say it probably again, is why are companies in business?
For people.
Right. You're either providing a product or a service for people. If you don't have people at the center of it and you lay off all your people, you eventually are going to cannibalize your customers.
Hmm.
They're not gonna be able to buy your stuff.
Hmm.
So, I guess we have to go through these like worldwide cycles, the fall of the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
you know,
Let's not go that far. Let's still hope that we're here.
well, no, I mean, there's been hundreds of
I know.
falls and rebuilds over the
Yeah.
years. And
Right.
so I think we're at that inflection point and people can stand up and talk about identity, go back to that because it's interesting. I think you brought something up about an article reading. Somebody was like, okay, what do I do? I also read something I thought was really sad, Heather.
Mm.
Someone had recently retired and they were
Mhm.
writing in to this person. Again, it was recent in my feed and said, I don't know what to do with myself.
I had this conversation with someone last week.
You did?
Hmm.
And why? I know we're talking about layoffs and I know we're talking about, companies quietly rehiring people, but to the identity question, how
Hmm.
sad is that?
Yeah.
That you don't have something that you can do.
Right. Well,
Like, and this is
there
this
were,
is a fully funded retirement we're talking about.
yeah, there were two people that come to mind when I had this conversation last week. One person was retired from the last organization I was at. He was there for many, many years, high executive, retired and ended up coming back. And I was like, I thought you retired. And he's like, I did, but I didn't realize that the people would stop calling me. So, like, nobody called me for golf anymore. Nobody called me for lunch anymore,
Oh,
because they weren't the client anymore. So they found somebody else. And so his identity for decades was tied to this organization. And when he got out of that organization, there was nothing left for him to do. And then there was another guy that I worked for, an attorney, who retired, and he would come back very dismayed and he would just come visit us. And we were like, how's it going? And he's like, I'm not wanted at home because I'm in the way. Because he was never home. He was always at work. So people created a world without him in it because he was always at work. And funny enough, I just read for my book club with my family, we read The Death of Ivan Iliad, which is about that same topic.
yeah, that's really sad. So I think this bears a whole separate maybe session on this, and maybe this will be broken into two.
Yeah.
Um, my mom was the same way when my father retired. She's like, "What are you doing home?" Because he traveled all the time. He was
Hmm.
overseas all the time. Now he couldn't wait to retire because he loved books. He volunteered at political things. He was a frustrated artist, and so he got out his paints and his carving and did all that kind of stuff. So he was perfectly happy as a pig on a poke to
Mm-hmm.
be my no, my mom wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
They had a three-level house and she had the upper and he had the basement and he had all his carving equipment and stuff. And so I think he missed his buddies
Yeah.
and
You
they
don't
did.
realize how much time of your life is spent in the walls of the people that, and actually I just did something this week. I was looking back on how many friends I have that are my personal friends now that originated from workplaces that I
Yeah.
still have years later. And like one of the ladies that I met when I was 21, we were both 21. We only worked together for 3 months. We are still friends 30 years later.
Yeah, I mean, my best friend, we worked at AOL together and we also had the horse thing in common. So and we worked like somewhat together, like, but not ever the same. I mean, our paths would cross.
Yeah.
Um, but, and moving here a couple of years ago
Hmm.
from,
Virginia.
to the Virginia, which I'm getting used to it, and there I was working, but I was remote a lot. I didn't work in an office, but I was traveling all the time. And so I had a lot of interaction with people. But I had my peeps that I lived there for so long.
Yeah.
So I had people I could go out with, and here it was really difficult. Now I'm starting to meet people, and now that I'm doing events and luncheons and things like that, it's a lot better. But
Yeah,
it
but
would
like you
be,
said, keep growing that network. Don't shut that network down because you have a comfortable job. Like, even when I was coming through my career as an admin, people found it odd that I was a networker. Like, why are you networking? You're an admin. And I was like, because it's important to the role that I have relationships and resources so that when I need them, they're available. I built relationships.
that's another subject we might want to talk about. I'd love to hear from our audience to see if anybody has any input about the building relationships things, because that used to be really important. And that's one way I help companies is in operational silos. And I think that's a lost art.
Mhm.
I was just talking to like a month ago, an old employer, former employer of mine, to come back and help and do some contract work. And it's a silo issue.
Mhm.
People are not, and I don't know whether that's a function of people are distributed working now, and we're not in the same building, but they've lost the ability to reach across and build relationships. And I don't care if you are an admin or
An
you're
executive.
an executive. You need to know
Yeah.
where to get stuff done. And I don't know. I think that's a really
Well,
dumb
it
question
just
to ask
benefits your
admins.
role if you know who to call when.
Right.
And that you're the resource in the reverse, that you're the resource that they call when.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
And you won't have that with AI.
well, agreed. It just like I just think there's some jobs, it's sick last week and I had to go to the doctor. I hate going to the doctor. Although I've got to say, this setup here was really good. It was really quick, and I could fill out my stuff online and go in there, and I went right back. But I can't even imagine. uh, there are some roles where you can replace AI. Like AI can replace somebody. You just can't.
Right.
So back to the whole question, it's interesting, going back to what we started talking about today, is the idea of, do you think that maybe some companies are trying to scare their employees and say, hey, AI is going to replace you? And they are
Hmm.
scaring them and they are getting rid of them. And then they're
Hmm.
quietly hiring them back. So they don't have to pay them as much of the benefits.
Yeah, that
And
sucks.
yeah. And so one of the questions I had was, what about unions? Like, I don't care if you're a contractor or you work for a company. like build white collar unions. We need to have unions again so people can say, hey, we can collectively bargain because you don't give a two flying figs about us. So if you want to hire, if you want to, lay people off, you're gonna have to lay, all of us are going to be laid off.
Yeah, that's
I don't know. I
interesting. I don't
think,
know. Is there such thing as a white collar union? I don't. I mean,
no,
other than
no,
government,
no, I haven't ever.
because like,
Teachers, are teachers
yeah,
considered,
teach that. I
and
don't know if it's a white
nurses,
collar. Like, I guess like
those are professionals.
yeah, blue collar is still like emergency services, and they're not white collar. But I wonder if corporate unions, if anybody's considered that.
I don't know. Are people too independent minded to say, hey,
Could you imagine like
I'm making a lot of money.
the
I am
local
not stepping
admin,
away.
the local admins won. Woo!
I don't know.
This would be the place to test it, Chi-Town.
yeah, I don't know. There are some, there are some people that are boycotting buying stuff, like hitting them where, I know it's not the same thing as a workers union, but people that stop buying stuff from people,
Hmm.
by showing your solidarity.
Right.
I get all these clips probably by some of the stuff that I watch. Um, where what did it come across? It said, oh, there was a couple of billionaires, tech billionaires that were like, oh, uh-oh. Oh, because all of the warehouse fires. Have you read about those?
I had heard something about it, but I try to stay sane by not watching news. So I've heard something about it, but I didn't know if it was rampant. Is it rampant?
I don't know. There were like 20 fires, and the person that was reporting on it said, no, hey, they looked up, and by the way, there's always a lot of fires
Mm,
that they just don't get reported on a national basis because they tend to be local.
mm.
But these were a couple of things that had been very openly, I think,
Pronounced.
pronounced. And I think it was a Amazon warehouse in Oregon.
Mm.
So one of the billionaires was like, "Oh, I think maybe we better do something about this before they do something."
That brings us full circle back to Office Space where he's like, I'm gonna burn this place to the ground. I want my red stapler.
Office Space has just so many profound observations.
Well, I would say we have to find another movie, but it's pretty resourceful.
It is. Well, I think we did pretty good for a few weeks about it. But anyways, would love to hear from people about this whole layoff thing and the tech
Yeah.
thing. And um
And here, just to reiterate, like companies should be transparent in communication, shared sacrifices, including leadership, not just nixing employees, reskilling, a redeployment before there's a layoff. But then what employees need to do, like we've talked about, was don't sink your identity in your job. Keep your skills current, keep networking, keep your relationships relevant, and just watch for the warning signs. Keep your eyes out, keep your eyes peeled, and stay relevant.
and save money
Yeah,
if you
always
can.
have 6 months in the bank, if at all possible. And that'll
Yeah.
go back to what we talked about last week, working multiple jobs.
In some cases, yeah, you do need to do that. But
But
I don't know.
10 jobs is not necessary between two people in one household, hopefully.
Well, some of that was raising cattle and then
But
on your own home.
yeah.
But so yeah, those are good. Those are good tips, Heather. I wish we were in a situation where there was kinder
Gentler
employees.
workplaces.
I was resisting adding that piece in there from Bush.
No, because that's what we're here to do.
Yeah.
Kinder, gentler workplaces.
Yeah, I mean, we're people.
Yeah.
We're just people, and you know, just want to live our lives, and some people raising kids. So those were good tips. But definitely keep your network skills up and your LinkedIn skills. What do you know what this stat is, by the way, of how people mostly find jobs? I don't know what the exact stat is, but it's
Mine is
through.
always in relationships. It's who do you know?
Mhm.
Do you
So
have anything else?
no, I wanted to know that stat. No, that was what I was to
Oh,
say. The reason why we're saying to people, keep your networking skills
yeah.
up
It's
as,
it's about who you know now. And I mean,
yeah.
not to say that it hasn't been in the past, because, people will refer to nepotism and, it's who they know. It's their dad owns the company. But in beyond that, like one of my favorite things about networking is I don't care who I meet because I don't know who they don't know or who they do know. So like I could meet John
Mhm.
Smith, but John Smith's mother started a business that is a global organization, and now you have this huge resource, but you got there because you took the time to meet John Smith.
Right. That's such a good point. I mean, plus it's just nice to, I had gone to a networking thing a couple weeks ago, and a woman contacted me last week, and she's like, "Oh, I'd love to get together." And I'm like, "Okay." I'm hoping she needs my services, but I don't, like, to your point, I don't really care. It's
Right.
just nice to have someplace to go, find out about them, she's local.
Hmm.
So, which is important for me, just to be able to get out and meet with cool people. So
Six
anyway,
degrees of Kevin Bacon.
yeah, we should play that game. Let's see where we know Kevin Bacon. So anyway, until next week,
Stay unfiltered.
Unfiltered, and email us,
Yeah.
like us, subscribe,
And
I
share.
think, and share, and give us some information.
Yeah, Mondays unfiltered at gmail.com. Until
See you
next
next
time.
week.
Bye.
That's it for this episode of Mondays Unfiltered. If something today made you laugh, think, cringe, or finally question the workplace norms you've been conditioned to accept, good. That's where change begins. If you enjoyed the conversation, hit subscribe, share the episode with someone who deserves a better Monday, and help us push the movement towards healthier, more human workplaces. And we want to hear your stories, the surprises, the successes, the dysfunction, the burnout, the breakthroughs. Just send them our way. Your experience might shape a future episode. And remember, we can do better, we can be better, and we don't have to tolerate BS just because it feels familiar. Until next week, stay curious, stay courageous, and stay unfiltered.